Are you looking for an awesome relationship? Are you looking to sail the seven seas? Well, maybe you want to become a captain or become a passenger on an amazing captain's boat. Come aboard today as we learn a little bit more about an economic model of relationships.
Because you can't spell relationship without ship.
Yes. So today we're going to be going over something called the concept of the captain and the passenger. It's something that's been popularized in Dr. Orion Taraban's book, The Value of Others. So hat tip to Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. That's Dr. Taraban's YouTube channel. So he originated this concept, so we want to make sure that all credit goes to where it is due. We appreciate the great works that he does and the ideas that he puts out. So we're just going to go ahead and talk about that and the modern implications of how that works today and all the nonsense surrounding it.
I think it was really fun to actually sit down and do this and kind of give it the preliminary look-see.
Sure.
Over our anniversary dinner.
Yeah. So this week we celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary.
What's up?
So what up? So that's fun. I think it's hilarious. We had a really weird comment this week, like saying, hey, they look like two single people. It's like, well, no, we've been married for 21 years. Thanks for your commentary. Thanks for the interaction. We appreciate it.
We also have 4 children, so that doesn't happen being celibate.
Yeah, right. And she's been picked. And it's good.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. I was like, why are people calling me a pick me? Already been picked.
Well, no, I mean, they're using it as a pejorative.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
They're
It's
just
like,
using
you
it
just
as a
want to
put
be mean about it. Okay, cool.
Sure.
Go on with your bad self.
Yeah.
But like, no.
It makes it so people don't have to think about things. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, let me just throw a label on you.
Let me throw out rhetoric I'm parroting. Like that, nothing original.
Or like an incel. It's like, look, man, I'm not involuntarily celibate. It's like, we get it on a regular basis and have a great time with it. So
I am sexually harassed constantly and I like it.
boom. All right. So the captain and the passenger. So the idea is it's an illustration about the economic nature of mating and dating. A lot of people don't want to think about mating and dating as like an economic concept, but really there's unequal value that's being traded amongst the different participants in a relationship. Because if I was doing everything that you would normally do in a relationship, that's not helpful to you. And if you were doing everything that I do in a relationship, we really wouldn't get that much further than we would otherwise.
And it's really an asinine point to say, oh, you're asking this other person to do it because you can't do it yourself. That is ridiculous.
Sure.
Because everybody can feasibly adult enough to keep themselves alive, or else they won't be alive. So like,
Right.
We just are in a place of playing to our strengths.
And we specialize in different things.
That's how we made it this far.
Absolutely. Yeah, you make the sandwiches and I make the money, and it works out really well for both of us. So let's see. Let's start out with setting the scene. So the way that this illustration goes is that the game of mating and dating is like a dock. And at the dock, you have different boats and captains that have those boats and passengers looking to get to where they want to be. And so though captain and passenger are by their very nature not gender specific, you will see throughout the explaining the concept that a lot of times men are generally captains and women are generally passengers.
Specific genders have a natural bend toward one role over the other.
Sure. So just to provide a quick overview, a captain has 3 fundamental challenges that they need to overcome in order to rise to their captaincy. They need to build a boat, learn to sail, and chart a course. Now, each of those 3 things are mandatory for someone to become a captain, because if they just build a boat, they're only a boat owner. If they only know how to sail, they're just a mariner. And if they only know how to chart a course, then they're only a navigator. It is by combining those 3 things that they become a captain. And this is a process that normally takes men about 10 years to accomplish. On the passenger side, you have 3 prerogatives of the passenger. You have the prerogative to inspect the ship, to test the captain and to examine the itinerary. Now, the reason why they're put out there as prerogatives is they are optional by their nature. You can do these three, and it would be wise to do all three of them, but it is not required to be a passenger. As long as you have the money for the fare, you can hop on the boat. Whereas being a competent captain requires these three fundamental principles. So let's go ahead and dig a little bit deeper on the captain. So a captain often sees a good passenger as one who will pay well for the privilege of going to where he or she is taken, or at least won't cause difficulty. What do you think about that?
I love the thing about not being difficult, because we know which gender bends towards being a passenger. It is the one who has great potential to be very difficult.
Right?
And it's interesting that that is one of the greater criteria for being a good passenger, is not being difficult, because a lot of women / passenger women will sit there and be drug on board, kicking and screaming. And it's just like, why?
Why are we doing this? If you don't want to be on board, then why?
Just stay.
Pay the fare.
And so doing that and being difficult and just makes the journey worse for both people.
Absolutely.
It's why are you making this harder on yourself?
Sure.
This is not the way to go long term. Okay, you can brat it up and try and be feisty, be high spirited and all of that stuff, but that is not going to fly for the long term. It's not a long term play. But today's culture, especially where divorce is so prevalent and culturally acceptable now, you don't see as much of these difficult passengers on a long itinerary. Because we're talking about itinerary later, I know. But on these longer itineraries, it's you're not happy, get off the next port, see you later.
Sure.
But whereas 70, 80 years ago now, starting definitely somewhat in our parents, but definitely in our grandparents' time, there were couples who were married 40, 50, 60, 75 years, but they hate each other.
Yeah. And I think that's
it's just what is happening? And they just, because it's just the way it was, you just stuck to it.
right. And I think that's why we emphasize long-term happy relationships rather than long-term relationships in general. I mean, you could be incredibly stubborn and just not get divorced for the sake of not getting divorced, or staying together for the children. And we've addressed that before, where it's if you're only together for the children and the children leave, then what?
What are you going to do?
Yeah, then what are you doing? At that point, it's just not healthy for either party. So let's go ahead and get into what it takes to build a boat. And we use this as an illustrative example to represent building an appealing or compelling lifestyle, right? In order to build a boat, you need to have both resources and knowledge. It's not enough to be able to buy all the pieces of the boat. You need to be able to put them together in a reasonable fashion so that you don't just have a ship that's going to sink right away, or you don't have just a dinghy.
And consequentially, it's not enough to have 10, 12 years of college of all different kinds of pieces of paper, degrees upon degrees. And then all you're left with is a bunch of student loan debt where you're like, I have all this knowledge and it's great. Great. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. I'm still trying to work at minimum wage to be able to pay for just the interest on my student loans. It's like, you're going to get very far like that.
Yeah. And now when I talk about resources, it's not specifically money, but money just happens to be the easiest, most accessible way to accumulate resources.
And the easiest to understand.
Another way that you can go and have sufficient resources to have an appealing lifestyle is to have developed huge arrays of social virtues that are generally more difficult to cultivate and take a lot more intentionality, because you need to be able to generate networks, go to different social events, and be a well-known commodity for those things. That's much more typical of like second and third generational wealthy children. Is they didn't make the wealth, but they are there to preserve it and to continue the family name. I think those are things that are much more common and where you would see that as an alternative to developing your own resources.
And what's interesting is even if you did inherit a legacy of financial stability, of like kind of the starts or the all of essentially an empire, even a few like the small subset of people who have that foundation to start with, even fewer of them are able to just not just live off of that and just there's fewer who actually take that and take on the responsibility of stewarding that for the next generation.
Yeah. And that's interesting because that goes right into knowledge, where you can know things academically, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a mastery of an accurate understanding of the reality around you. So with money, you can go ahead and kind of understand money, and you can really understand in depth what money is, why it is what it is, and not only how to develop it, but how to preserve it. And those are things that are just essential to creating an appealing, emotionally thriving lifestyle that's appealing for a wide variety of people.
That's what I love about the root of the word for discipleship. It is actually literally to sit at one's feet, to actually sit and spend the time with a master to learn the ways of the Jedi, pretty much, to try to learn the skills, to be able to steward those resources to better and greater things. And also then to turn to the next generation, to the next.
Oh, then takes on the master.
Yeah, those
afterwards.
like the passing of the torch kind of thing.
Well, and I think that's probably one of the most common ways that you see men become captains is by first serving as an apprentice on another captain's ship through employment or through some kind of informal mentorship or things of that nature. And I think that's one of the best ways to get to learn all those key things that you need to have to be successful.
My concern is that it's getting more and more rare. That's more and more of a lost art.
Sure. And I think people need to be more intentional about it nowadays to go seek it out, because I think in a lot of ways, our school system kind of took these things out of the social consciousness, right? You know, back in the day when woodshop and all the electives that you could go ahead and really specialize down in, I think they were de-emphasized for the sake of putting in other social mores that we wanted to make sure that kids had as a part of their baseline programming.
Also, the time in which we grew up and started entering into college and stuff, this boom in academia, it became learning and the accumulation of knowledge rather than the accumulation of wisdom, just knowledge in a vacuum, where you take all these classes, you learn all these things, you get a piece of paper to say you learned the things, but then you didn't alongside of it learn how to do while you were like learning on the job and those kinds of like trial by fire sort of, you didn't get to get your hands in there really. I mean, you see it more in fields like education, like you get to student teach and stuff before you become a teacher. You see it in medicine, which is all very good because you don't want to put somebody putting their hands in your body, and just rifling around in there going, I've never done this before. It's like, no, thanks.
That sounds terrible.
Is this your first surgery? Mine too. It's like, can I leave now?
Definitely don't do that before the anesthesia.
Right.
So we talked about building a boat and how it's not just a matter of having a boat. It's about crafting an appealing lifestyle, and it takes both resources and knowledge. Because if you don't know anything about buoyancy, guess what? Boat's going to sink, and it's going to be a really bad boat.
Well, a little rope together raft is very different than a cruise ship.
Absolutely.
Than an ocean liner,
Right? That's something to go ahead and bring up is like, there's different kinds of boats for different kinds of voyages, right? Maybe you want to have a lifestyle that is fast and loose. So maybe you want to go ahead and build a speedboat for yourself. It's really exciting, but it's meant for more short-term relationships. That doesn't make sense for me in my context. I'd prefer to be more of a cruise ship or a battleship or something like that, where we can go ahead and stand the waves and stand the test of time. But everybody gets the opportunity to decide whether they want to build their own boat.
And that calls back to the previous episodes where we're talking about like, hey, take a look at yourself, take a look at what you want out of life, and go from there as far as vetting who you want to come with you, what kind of vehicle you're going to build to get there. So this is just right alongside of it.
Cool. So outside of building a boat, the next thing is to learn how to sail. In other words, develop self-mastery and relationship skills, right? So two big things that fall under this is not necessarily all of the ins and outs of how to make the money. I mean, it's implied in building a boat that you know how to do those things. Mm-hmm. This is really more about seduction and frame management, right? So seduction, of course, is the art of generating feelings and causing the things to happen.
You doing?
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's going to look different from a man or from a woman. They're very different skills and they're executed
very different approaches.
Very different approaches, right? And if you know how to do these things, you're going to be much better off finding the better quality passengers, and it'll be much easier to do what you need to do to get to where you want to go.
You got all this stuff and but you got no game.
If you have no game, you're not going to get anywhere, because there's going to be plenty of guys and plenty of girls that are just blindly going through life. And if they end up with a happy relationship, a lot of times it's out of rather than any kind of intentional effort on their part. Right. So, and now seduction is not the same thing as attractiveness.
No.
Right. I think I've seen a lot of guys that are not very good looking, but they are honed in on their game, and they're with these women that are incredibly beautiful. And you're like, how in the world did this happen? They have game. The next piece is frame management, where the frame is the structure of a negotiated agreement in terms of a relationship, because every relationship goes through 3 stages. You've got the attraction stage, you've got the negotiation stage, and then you've got the maintenance stage. And frame management is about keeping the negotiated terms where they belong. So time, circumstances, and personal agendas challenge the original agreement on a regular basis. It's the job of the captain to not necessarily be too rigid or too flexible, but to be firm with what the agreement is, because he put in the time and the effort to cause the boat to be built and to master all the skills associated with navigating it in the storms and in the calm waters. So naturally, they have a bit of an advantage as far as that's concerned.
Especially once the terms have been negotiated and there is an agreement that is struck, holding to those terms.
Right.
I mean, because there's going to be different seasons and different circumstances that kind of move the goalposts a bit, but completely like saying, okay, I'm going to sign up for this and we're not going to have kids, right? And then it's like, right. And then, we're going to have kids, right? No, we said not to. I mean, if you both agree that, that's going to change and we go, cool. But like the default is if both are conflicted and you agreed not to in the beginning, that was the basis of the relationship when it was started.
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that, where if you go ahead and go into a relationship and understand where both people are in the relationship, it's really important to get on common ground so that surprises don't come up later. And if a surprise does come up later, like new circumstances, it's important to actually talk through it rather than trying to force your way, because then you're going to end up with either your passenger wanting to jump ship or the captain wanting to kick the passenger off the ship, because mutinies are not something that are appreciated on a boat with a captain that has done the work to get to where he needs to go.
Or if you don't hold to the negotiation and you just kind of let, the passenger like steamroll you, there's a mutiny afoot. And if you don't hold your position, you're going to just sit there and let it happen.
Yeah, that reminds me of a concept that Richard Cooper had popularized called the betazation through 1,000 concessions. So when your spouse or your significant other makes all these demands of you and you concede to them one after the other, you end up losing your ability to navigate the course of where your relationship is going.
Yeah, you have no stake in the direction that your relationship is taking. And it's just like, hey, how did I get here? It's like one concession at a time.
Sure. And the thing is, I'm not here to say that don't ever concede. I'm not about black and white thinking, but be mindful of what you're agreeing to along the process and don't take your hands off the wheel, right? You want to go ahead and make sure that the ship is going where you want it to go and where y'all have collectively agreed the destination should be. Obviously, storms will go ahead and throw you off track from time to time. And it's about going back to where you had decided the destination should be and getting back on track is important.
And I think we'll probably circle back to this point like later on.
Absolutely.
Because we'll talk about like when some people try and like split the difference by like taking turns being the captain and like all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh my.
Yeah, we'll talk through that in a little bit.
But before we kind of go further with this, I kind of wanted to like kind of zoom back out for a second and kind of touch on the fact that a lot of people do not like to think of relationships like this in a very transactional way or a contractual arrangement or anything like that. But
why do you think that is?
Because it kind of puts a halt on the moonlight and roses and classical music swelling in the background. Like it takes the romanticism out of it.
Okay, so you're talking about the idea that if things are too out in the open and explicit, it takes all the fun out of it?
The fun and nice feels out of it. But the thing is, when you are just too caught up in those, that's not what's going to land you a solid one of these.
A solid option.
Yeah. This is not going to be, if you just follow your feelings, you're not going to build a solid lifestyle that's going to take you far.
Sure. I mean, like,
you hop on the speedboat.
That's a huge deal about learning how to sail, right? Is when there's an emotional storm going on, it's important to know how to deal with that and to know how to fight through things and how to argue for the betterment of the relationship. And oftentimes the answer is not actually fighting, because I don't know too many men that have ever gotten into a fight with a woman and felt like they came out better for it, because it isn't about the fight most of the time. Most of the time it's about the emotions or there's something else going on, or not the actual thing that's being fought about.
There's a fundamental renegotiation in the arrangement.
Maybe.
But they don't want to like get that nitty gritty. They're just mad and they just want to either avoid being mad or avoid the other person being mad at them.
Or avoid some kind of responsibility.
Yeah, avoid responsibility or just the natural human response to pain to avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is bad. I don't want to do this anymore. So they either disengage or completely just like leave or back down or what have you. Mm-hmm. So it just like, you need a little bit of this kind of, I don't know, meta thought about this kind of thing. Like getting a little bit meta about a relationship. Yeah, it's fun with all the feelings and stuff, but you really have to think of it more at times as a negotiation, as a contractual agreement.
Sure, there's definitely an agreement, and it's not necessarily explicit. It's really subtle. And I think that's probably where it's more fun. But we understand that there are fundamentally different things that we are both bringing to the table to create this relationship, and things that we're both interested in that are different, because if we brought the same thing, we wouldn't be interested in each other. Mm-hmm. Right? And even if you're trading anything, there's a fundamental difference in the kinds of resources. Mm-hmm. Just because they are unequal, as in they are not the same, doesn't mean they're not equally valuable.
Exactly.
Right? And if we're both bringing things that are equally valuable to the exchange, we're both made better for it, because we're offering something that we value less than the thing we're seeking to exchange for, right? Because I can go ahead and provide a lot more of this thing, but I already have a lot of it. It's kind of like the value of water in a desert is different than the value of water when there's a spring nearby. Yeah. It's kind of a big difference like that. So now that we talked about building a boat and learning how to sail. Let's get back on track and learn how to chart a course, right? And charting a course in the context of being a captain is to have a clear purpose and direction in life. And this is kind of the journey, and the destination are intended to be of redemptive value for all of the time and effort put into cultivating this life that you've created for yourself as a captain, right? The destination is the pretext for the journey, right? You have to go ahead and begin with the end in mind, and then get from where you are to where you want to be. And having this overarching purpose really helps out in the times where life is really tough and when you're knocked off course in the various storms of life.
Yeah, this is definitely where this person who has built all of this and spent all of this time cultivating it, this is where the value really lies in a captain's role, is they've already put in the time, the effort, the resources to learn to navigate when conditions are at their worst.
Sure.
So when things are like constantly in flux, and maybe things are just coming at us like here and there and everywhere, and it's just like I'm freaking out. And you're like, it's gonna be fine, we're fine. But weirdly, when things hits the fan, I'm like, we're gonna be okay, and I'm just gonna it's like sometimes you look at me, you're like, why aren't you freaking out way worse than you normally do day to day? I'm like, I don't know. My brain is dumb.
Sure.
But it's because either way, in any capacity, most of that is because I know that I've picked a good one. So I know that no matter what, as long as we're okay, which is like, I could depend on that. Everything else can be like falling apart. And I'm like, this sucks, but we're going to be fine.
Sure. And things may appear to be falling apart rather than them actually falling apart. Because I think one of the things that I do in our relationships, I build in safeguards so that if something is going wrong, we have ways that we can bolster ourselves that prevent us from going down too far. It's kind of like the way that I look at speculative investments, where I'm only willing to put 10% of my net worth at risk for any speculative investment, so that we have the opportunity to play in the risk pool, but not get cleaned out in the process.
Not a financial advisor.
Yeah, we're not
Seek
providing.
a professional.
Yeah, seek professional help if you're looking for financial advice. If you need someone to talk to, by all means, you can hit us up and we can go ahead and put you in contact with somebody. That's fine.
But even if like catastrophizing brain over here is like kind of losing it a little bit, ultimately it's like, let me have my little human reaction, and okay, like I'll put on my big girl panties and we'll be okay. And know that we're fine.
Sure. Now, something important about charting a course and advertising your destination is when you are out on the dock, by advertising a destination, you're probably going to dissuade so many different passengers from coming aboard your ship. Because say you're going to Hong Kong, unless somebody else wants to go to Hong Kong with you, they're not interested in hopping on a boat going to Hong Kong.
Yeah, bringing it down to like brass tacks in like real life. If you're advertising a trip all the way to a golden wedding anniversary with kids and grandkids and the family reunion, a whole big, huge family picture, and somebody's just like, I want none of that. Like the thought of having children like repulses me. No, thank you. It's like, good. We've already weeded out those who do not have this same aspiration.
Sure.
It's like, good. That is the way that this system works as intended.
Yeah. And I think a lot of guys make the mistake of not advertising where their core values are and where their destination is, thinking that that's going to give them broader appeal. Sure, they don't get to go ahead and shoot you down for your destination right away. But what happens when you guys have to come up with a destination? Are you going to ask the passenger where they're going to go? And if that's the case, you're going to end up you'll be a taxi driver. And the taxi driver follows what the passenger wants. They don't go ahead and act on their own initiative. So that's just not going to work out really well.
No.
So we talked about the three essential mandatory things that are the challenges of the captain, which are to build a boat, to learn to sail, and to chart a course. And the fact that each of those challenges are necessary to become a captain. And once you've accomplished all three of them, it is sufficient to be a captain. Now, once again, captain is not a gendered term specifically, though it is traditionally male in its application. Now let's go ahead and move on to the passenger side of the equation.
Like that is all part of the pre-cruise checklist. Like it's a thing, and it's like that's how you get your pilot's captain's license, whatever. The MCATs of life.
The MCATs of life. Okay, so a passenger has three prerogatives, which are really the things that are the source of the captain's challenges in a lot of ways. So the three prerogatives are to inspect the ship, to test the captain, and to examine the itinerary. So if we go ahead and look at the three challenges of the captain, they match up, right? Now, what are the things a passenger is looking for? Generally, a passenger is looking for a good captain that will safely take them where they need to go as cheaply as possible. And a good passenger generally provides companionship and sexual access as their fare to hop aboard.
See, and then this is where people go, why you got to say that? Like, why you got to say it like that? That's not, it takes the romance out of all of it and all of that stuff.
But that's the reality.
There has to be some measure of pragmatism that goes into making these choices that literally chart the course of your life.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the fact that it's a prerogative and not like a requirement, a lot of potential passengers / ladies don't even know that there's a checklist, let alone check it.
Well, sure.
Let alone look at it.
There's very little training in how to select mates in our society, right? A lot of times, you have moms teaching their daughters how to do things. And if they didn't come from a great home or they don't have a great relationship to rely on, the lessons that they give will reflect that.
Yeah, especially like if coming from a single mother and I'm her only child and I'm a daughter. So she was just like, you got to go to school, you got to get an education. And a lot of this is prevalent rhetoric in the culture, as we have already seen on some of the engagement, that people have been so burned, especially women have been so burned by both their family of origin and their own experience that they are just fixated on not having to rely on a man.
Right.
They want a relationship and they want to be close to somebody and go through with a life partner, but they don't want to be trapped or reliant by being reliant on a man. And that is where you're not even checking. You just tore up the checklist and threw it to the wind. Mm-hmm. And you're going to just go into it and be like, this one looks good. Okay. And you're just setting yourself up for failure. Yeah. And it honestly hurts my heart because I see a lot of people just kind of just however the feels take you. And it's like, there needs to be a little bit more thought put into this. And yeah, I know it sucks, but that's just the nature of relationships, is making yourself vulnerable to failure, of it being hurt. But if you really take the time to look at it more pragmatically and less romantically to a degree, it's going to go better for the long haul.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's go ahead and talk about inspecting the ship. Right. So if the captain goes ahead and builds this fine vessel, someone's got to go ahead and take a look at it and see, yeah, this is great. Or no, that's a raft. I don't want to have anything to do with that. That's not appealing to me.
Again, all whatever's in line with your life goals.
Absolutely. Now, generally speaking, the passenger is constrained by both time and money. So time, pretty straightforward. You have a reproductive window that just exists as a matter of biology and as a matter of fact. And you may like it or you may not like it.
It is what it is. And a lot of people get very, very sensitive about that. But I mean, go consult a biology book, talk to your OBGYN, go ask your mama. It's a fact of life. It's part of the birds and the bees. And there's just a biological time clock that is there. Whether you hear it ticking or not, whether you want to listen to it ticking or not, it just is.
Right. So that's the time aspect. Now, the money aspect in this example is, what do you have to pay the fare? Like, are you a 10? If you are, then, oh my gosh, then chances are you're going to be able to have a great time with optionality in terms of being able to pay whatever fare is necessary to get on the boat that you want to be on. However, the vast majority of people are not that. So they have to have a realistic understanding of what they bring to the table. Once again, hey, what do you bring to the table comes up in this negotiation.
Toward the end of our night out, talking about the crazy to hot ratio, the graph, like the crazy to hot line.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty common meme in our society.
Like, I don't know about that. We'll have to go look for one of those. But, if you're a 10, you can probably stand to make a lot more demands of whoever you're soliciting for
passage.
For passage.
But at the same time, like, you have to have a reasonable understanding of what you're dealing with. Because I think a lot of people are delusional and think that they're 10s when they're really more like a 4 or a 5.
Yeah.
And having accurate self-knowledge is part of this inspection process. Because if you know what you're dealing with, you have a much easier time in the negotiation phase.
And
later
just
on.
like most people are not going to be 10s if they're like a 4 or a 5, if you're willing to be a lot less likely to cause difficulty, like that goes a longer way than somebody who's just like perfect, has it all right there, but that's all there is.
Sure.
And you're just going to have a lifetime of heartache and complaining and weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys value peace in their relationship, and not causing problems is definitely a way to get a leg up on your competition, so to speak. So another thing that's important to know in our society is that because the time and money constraints exist on the passenger, that one of the main time savers they use is to go ahead and look at which captains have a bunch of people gathering at their ship, because they get to offload some of that due diligence responsibility to other people, because surely one of them has checked him out and knows what's up, and that's why he has a crowd around him.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is if the guy has a bajillion people wanting to get on his boat,
DMs.
hopefully you have something that sets you apart so that you can get the kind of relationship that you want out of this. There's something to think about there. And generally speaking, when a passenger wants to go ahead and take a look at this ship, you want to go ahead and look at the dude's appearance, how he presents himself in terms of his physique and his fashion sense. I think these are things that are generally accepted that women look at when they're looking at a dude.
See all the red flags.
Right. See red flags.
The opposite of red flags is what we're looking for here.
We're looking for green flags.
Green flags.
The way that he speaks, his speech, and his manner are things that, generally speaking, passengers are looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Is this guy on an even keel? Does he treat himself with respect? Does he treat other people with respect? And of course, you're not going to hop on the boat unless you get to take a look at the interior, right? Like, for example, when we go on a cruise, you are definitely one to go ahead and look at, oh, this suite has this kind of accommodations, and let's go ahead and get the grand suite.
Of course.
Because of this and this and this. Because you look at all the pictures ahead of time and you know what you're looking for.
Well, especially if, it's a, 14 plus day itinerary, rather than if it's just like one of the 3 to 4 day turnarounds, it's like, it's just a place to crash. That's fine.
It depends on what you're looking for out of the voyage.
Exactly.
Right?
Again, it depends on the kind of search criteria you are working with. But I think you were talking about like all of those red flags that we talked about earlier when looking for a captain. What's going to set the biggest thing that's going to set a passenger apart within the confines of this scenario is going to hinge on that not causing difficulty.
Yeah, I think a lot of that.
Being able to, once everything's agreed upon and you guys set sail, if then she's gonna like take off the mask and like be the whole problem.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a big thing.
People walk the plank over that kind of thing.
Yeah. And so that boils down, that aspect in a passenger is going to boil down to a very ugly word in this culture.
What's that?
It's the S word.
Which S word?
Not that S word. Submission.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me about that.
That in this day and age, submission is a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
People don't like to hear it unless you're talking about like 50 Shades of Grey. And then you're into that book talk world. I'm not personally.
Well, not the book talk piece.
No, not when you live it every day. Okay. But in general, if you are looking at the long haul and you are going to establish a family culture, a household culture for your marriage, your children, and on down the line, and you really want that golden anniversary with the big family picture, you don't get there by power struggles. You don't get there by it's going to be my way or the highway. It's ultimately, you have to decide who is going to be the ultimate decision maker. Because if you are constantly back and forth trying to compete with your spouse, like we said before, or even just try and be the immovable one, it's not, those things are going to cause a wedge. And those things are those little, maybe in this scenario or in this analogy, like the little punctures in the hull of the ship. And all of a sudden you're like sinking halfway in the middle of the ocean and you're like, how did that happen? That's how that happened.
Right. But a capable captain will see the punctures and will say, hey, look, you're doing all this damage to the boat. Maybe you need a trip to the brig.
Right? Or just walk the plank and let the sharks deal with it.
Right. And the thing is, if you're intentionally causing damage to the boat, or there ends up being a divorce and half the boat goes to the passenger, well, a capable captain can build a new boat, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And it's going to be just fine. But the ability to plot a course is not a right or responsibility of the passenger. It is a privilege afforded to the captain because the captain has put in the time and effort to be and to know the things that need to be known to get to where you want to be.
But it is definitely the passenger who really looks at all of the things that are the prerogatives of the passenger. Like, it is those people who really know what they're about, know what they want, and select based on those things. And really, because when you make a sales transaction or something, like even just like a real estate agent or a lawyer or something like that, or therapist, from your first meeting, if you don't vibe well together and you kind of lay out what you're about, what you're looking for and all that stuff, and they're still trying to kind of fit a square peg in a round hole, you already know ahead of time that this is not going to work well and you need to find something different. Also, as the one who's like the selling agent of some sort, can tell when a customer or passenger in this case is really there to buy or just there to shop. And it works much better. And that is what can set a passenger apart better or above a bunch of other people if they present themselves as really interested in what's here and really enthusiastic about
This process.
rather than these people just want to flock to this because of FOMO, because of all the hype. They just want to ride the hype vibes.
That's a pretty good segue to the next piece, testing the captain. So like putting them on a test drive. Like if you test drive a vehicle, the chances of you purchasing that vehicle or the level of commitment for purchasing a vehicle is generally higher than if you were just going to browse the lot.
And we're not talking about literal test driving.
Or maybe we are talking about test driving, literally. I mean, it just depends on the context of what's going on.
Yeah, on your criteria, but in the context of a long-term happy relationship, that is one of those things that comes way later.
Sure, but test driving doesn't have to be physical. It can also
Exactly.
be about testing one's character. And I think that's really more important for the basis of a long-term relationship.
Absolutely. And that is the big thing. So it's like, don't go there. Okay. Go wash your brains. Go get right with Jesus. No, I'm kidding. Just to know that the things that will take you far are far beyond the physical. I mean, that is what kind of boy meets girl, that's what's going to connect first. But
slots and tabs and all that.
Yeah, of course. Like, you're hot, I'm hot, let's get it popping. And that's all well and good, but that is not based on the objectives that we're working with here.
Yeah, not the things that we would offer as a prescription for somebody else.
Exactly.
They may be descriptively true, but they may not necessarily prescriptively for your benefit, right? So involved in testing the captain, the idea is you want to differentiate between someone who is a genuine captain and someone who just talks the talk. That's what we're going through. And the vehicle in the example of a test drive is the captain's, his character, whether a woman or a passenger decides to try to be flaky or disrespectful or impulsive or dishonest or incompetent at certain times. These are all methods by which passengers test a captain to see how he reacts to those things. Because on a long enough timeline, all of these things happen.
Definitely.
In every relationship.
Because it's never all hearts and rainbows and butterflies and roses and great, awesome happiness all the time. Like, life is real, and you have to know when the bottom's falling out, and it's seriously like rough. Are they capable of getting you to a better place? Or my brain's buffering now.
Yeah, that's fine. So one thing to look at is when a passenger is doing these things in the testing process, they test the character, one, but they also see how he reacts to these things. Because if the passenger is flaky or disrespectful and the guy just accepts that, that tells you something about their character. And if they overreact instead of just checking you politely, there's different ways you can look at that. And I think that it's important for men of character and captains in general to look at these kinds of bad behavior, like dishonesty or incompetence or impulsiveness, and to put it in the proper perspective and to not allow that behavior, because what you allow at the beginning is likely to be that which rules you later on in the relationship.
I do love it when we're out in the wild and like another couple, they're kicking off at each other and they're like, nah. And you just go, are you going to put up with that?
Oh, that was hilarious. That reminds me
gosh.
of when we came back from our last cruise at the airport. And this lady was just wilding on her husband, and he walked off and had a smoke. When he came back, I'm like, hey, bud, what's the deal? And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, dude, she's not treating you well. What's the deal with that? Do you pay the bills? Do you take care of the lifestyle? And he's like, yeah, I pay all the bills. I do everything. And I'm like, why are you putting up with that disrespect in public? And he's like, I never thought of that. It was really interesting to see the way that they interacted with each other. And like, obviously, you're not going to see night and day differences over time, but it's really important to know, hey, if you're the captain, you have authority over everybody on your ship, because when things go wrong, you need to be able to call the shots.
Because you're the one ultimately accountable.
Yeah, because your ability, every right comes with responsibility. Every privilege comes with corresponding responsibility. And the responsibility associated with authority is accountability. They're going to go ahead and take a look to you for answers on what went wrong. And you need to be ready for an answer. And that's okay. It's the mantle of responsibility that leaders take on day in and day out. And it's important that we do those things.
So it's like, however you structure your family, your relationships, all of that, if you're the one who's calling the shots, you are also the one who needs to account for when things mess up.
Right.
And
they will, inevitably. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship, no such thing as a perfect life. There's always going to be some unknowns that come up. And the question is, how is your character when you're in the refining fire, right? Now, that's not to say that testing is universally a bad thing. I think a lot of times it's important for the testing to happen so that the passenger can be comfortable with your leadership. Gently check them and let them know, hey, you're off base here. If they are the kind that are looking for a strong captain to lead them, that is a positive thing to them, even if they get in their feelings in the moment.
Yeah. And part of that, being a pastor who won't cause difficulty again, is you're not, and part of the whole submission thing is not that you never get a voice, you never get to speak up, or else you're not being submissive. It is, if you have these kinds of concerns or whatever that you need to bring up, that you come correct.
Right.
And then part of the responsibility of being in authority and being in leadership as the captain is you need to hear them.
Sure.
And that is part of the mandate, even biblically, men love your wives. Part of that is hearing them. Because again, the deep-seated need of a woman is to be known and to know people with whom she shares relationships. So part of that being known is being heard. Because you can't, unless you actually take the time to listen to somebody, you won't know them. So it's not that you don't get a voice and you get steamrolled all the time. You always have to like that. No, that's abuse. That's abuse. But even if things do not go your way, you need to defer. But at least beyond the shadow of a doubt that you've been heard. And I actually shared this in like a book club with a bunch of ladies last night about that. A lot of the decisions that you make are big picture ones that are the things that navigate the trajectory of our lives together.
Right.
But you don't see things that I see as boots on the ground in the trenches of parenting every day with all the doctor's appointments, the groceries and the meal planning and all this stuff like that. I have that. And so I can bring you the pain points that I'm experiencing. And then in any large scale decision, I tell you the concerns that are from my day-to-day detailed perspective. And you can hear that. And even if you still decide that you need to proceed the way that you already had the idea, I know that I've been heard. My perspective has been considered.
Right. And I have the responsibility of determining to what degree I bend my ear to that and all of that. And one thing is to have the responsibility of taking the feedback and taking the input and seeing when applicable to incorporate that into the plan so that those concerns are taken care of along the way.
Especially because not everything has to be I need this thing and saying the answer is either yes or no.
It's often a different shades of gray.
Yeah. There's also the, okay, we can work that in a reasonable amount of time, or yes, but I need you to wait a minute because I have all this stuff going on. Because one, talking about me being heard from all the nitty gritty stuff, you don't know everything I'm experiencing day to day, but also I don't know what you have going on for the betterment of our entire family and our kids and even our kids' kids going forward. That is what I am co-laboring, working with you toward. And part of that is making sure that I'm staying in my lane and not trying to
steer the ship.
Yeah.
Right.
No mutinies allowed.
Right. And so even though submission is kind of like a dirty word in our society, I think that another way to express the same idea that'd be a little bit easier for people to take is the idea of willful cooperation, right?
Yeah.
And even better is enthusiastic cooperation.
Yeah.
Right. There are different levels to this thing.
Not just like when you're a kid, you're like, you need to do this thing. You need to put on your socks and shoes so we can go. And there's I don't want to, I'm playing my video games. We need to go now. And it's okay, fine. That's not enthusiastic. That's not.
And it's not even willing or willful cooperation, right? That's begrudging cooperation, right?
It's dragging, kicking, and screaming.
Well, I mean, the same thing is in the bedroom, right? Is there's a difference between the starfish situation and the backflips and cartwheels and all the things, right? There are different levels to this thing. And willful cooperation and enthusiastic cooperation is just these levels of submission in the context of a loving relationship.
Yeah. And I mean, sometimes even in that arena, that sometimes with chronic issues and kids that never leave the house because I home educate, there are limits to my bandwidth quite quite often. And for the most part, I make it my focus never to give you like the leftovers of my energy.
Right.
There is always like this thought of having a reserve that is saved for you because ultimately it has to happen at the end of the day.
Sure. It's just a matter of
we're not
life.
morning people. Let's not get it twisted. But like there is always that holding, what do people call holding space? Like I'm holding space for you. So you don't get the leftovers of my energy, my patience, my I don't know what, but that so that I am that willing cooperative participant.
Sure. I mean, and it helps when we're good at what we do, right? Right. It's just, it makes it easy to hold that space and to save the spoons because we know we're going to have a great time.
Yeah. That's actually awesome that we get that nice end to the day to be together.
Sure.
And that is honestly the meat and potatoes of what has kept us going together in unison.
And oftentimes it's the glue of a relationship.
Yeah. I try to have as little headaches as possible.
Yeah. And that's definitely appreciated, right? But that's all part of the whole submission or willful or enthusiastic cooperation. But the idea is that testing in and of itself should be taken as an indicator of high interest. If she's trying to go ahead and test you, it's because she's interested. Or she's just that kind of person. And if she is just that kind of person, you might want to just steer clear of that. You're like, yeah, I'm going to refuse service to this customer.
Is that by the gangplank? There's a little sign that says, we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, shoot, if you go into building an amazing boat and you are, a master of your craft, why in the world would you deal with that? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. And just like if you don't know what you're about and you sign up with this person who you're like, oh yeah, I'm on board with this. But then you figure out this is not what it was. Well, if you would have done some research ahead of time rather than just leading with your feelings and your the doe eyes and stuff, like, yeah, that's well, if it isn't the consequences of your own actions.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of your own actions.
How about that?
How about that? You mean due diligence is important to reduce risk in relationships?
Shock.
That's shocking. Oh my gosh. Speaking of due diligence, testing the captain is kind of a big deal and is something that happens when there's high degrees of interest, and it's about testing the captain's character more than anything else. The next part is examining the itinerary. So the idea is you want to determine whether the captains are really going where they're saying they're going. So part of that's like testing the character, but to identify their circumstances and to see whether or not they have the capability to go where they claim they're going. And while the examination of an itinerary for a normal cruise or something like that is a direct process, you can go ahead and look at, hey, we're going to Nassau this day, we're going to Coco Key this day, we're going to go ahead and be at sea this day. In reality, it's a lot less direct in a relationship because it isn't so much, hey, a matter of do they have the fuel? Do they have the logistics and the resources? A lot of times it is seeing whether their abilities match their vision for life, right? Because they can go ahead and say they have a vision, but unless they're acting in accordance with their words, you're not going to have congruency. And it's an easy recipe to see that things are unlikely to end up the way that you want them to.
That is very true of all human relationships, especially when you all can talk about this and that and the other on a cursory level. But when somebody really shows you who they are,
believe them.
Believe them.
Right.
Like if somebody's talking up a big game and then they're fooling around, one of these things is not like the others.
Yeah.
It's a problem. It's a problem. And you need to really examine what's really happening there. And sometimes that does not need to go back into a renegotiation phase. It's just these two things don't match. I'm just gonna not do this anymore.
Hey, just walk past.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't match what your priorities are. And once again, it goes back to all of these prerogatives of the passenger require a degree of self-knowledge to successfully come to the negotiating phase and to select a captain.
And unfortunately, especially when we're talking about romantic relationships, the romantic part is emphasized more than the relationship.
Well, yeah, people want to get the wedding, not necessarily the marriage.
Yeah. And that's where people get hung up. And then you're still stuck with all the debt from the wedding and you still don't have the relationship anymore.
Oof.
Ouch.
Big oof.
Yeah.
So once the captain has done all of his responsibilities of building the ship, learning how to sail, and charting the course, and the passenger inspects the ship, likes what they see, tests the captain, is comfortable with his leadership and how he is, and examines the itinerary, that's when they can start negotiating for a relationship.
All of the checklists for both parties is all just part of just picking, like, this is who I'm going to establish a relationship for. That is all happening at the front door, even.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild that a lot of people just rush up the gangplank and just go, here I am. This is what we're going to do. And it's like, did you do all that? No, it's not important.
Well, like you said before, most of the time people don't know to do these inspections in the first place.
Especially in the case of the passenger. Like, you can't really
because it's all optional.
Have a quality boat or anything without the checklist for the captain.
Yeah, because they're all required.
Yeah. But the passenger thing is more nuanced. And those are the ones, it's almost like, hello, captains out there, ask for the passenger checklist. Just demand it on entry. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably for the best that way to go ahead and really dig in on the passenger. But I think that because the prerogatives of the passenger are really more to be highlighted, because they get to go ahead and look for a good that is relatively rare in society, that by exercising their prerogatives, that due diligence process is a two-way street. Yeah. Because while they're being tested, they can easily say, no, I'm not interested in taking you to this destination.
Well, and those, like, we were talking about that, the hype train and like the FOMO of like, I need to like get in with this person because they have a whole flock of people around them. One of those things that might be able, and I would venture personally to say it will probably be able to get you up to the front of the crowd, is just be like, here's my checklist. This is what I'm looking for. You seem to match. Can we vibe? Doing that alone would be like, this is somebody who thinks about things.
Yeah. I mean, that directness takes a little bit of the romance out of it. But I think that there is something to be said about a well-qualified candidate being very straightforward about their desire to be in relationship.
Yeah, those people are like, you're taking all the romance out of it. It's just making it so like clinical. It's like, well, how's that romance, hearts and flowers, working for you?
And maybe people just have very different priorities in life, and that's okay. That's not what we would advocate for. But hey, to each their own. Not going to pee in their cereal.
Exactly.
They can go ahead and ride every speedboat, every yacht that they want.
Exactly. It's like those are like those checklists and stuff kind of mostly out the window if you just look for speedboat.
Sure.
Tom Sawyer raft. You just not know how to tie knots. That's it.
There you go. So we talked about these things on both captains and passengers. And though they are generally male captains and female passengers, it's important to recognize that in our modern era, there's the rise of female captains.
Here we go.
Women that are putting in the 10 years to go ahead and rise to their own captaincy.
Can't never say we aren't equal opportunity here.
Right. And here's the thing. I think it's important for women to have the opportunity to be captains if they choose that as their life, right? But they have to realize that every responsibility has their liabilities associated with it. And a lot of times I think that women are preached a mixed message of how to go about doing things. And so you end up with a mixed strategy. A lot of times, these women who are female captains maybe don't want to pick up a passenger. They want a better, more attractive captain. The problem with that is really competent captains are rarely just hanging out at the dock. They're usually out at sea. And so what's left over a lot of times is just these passengers. So that's one way that it can go for female captains. Another way that it can go is if they go out to sea and try to catch up with another competent captain and hop on their boat. Hey, that's a strategy. But the problem is taking that 10 years to go ahead and build up your own captaincy. Very rarely would a captain that had put in that effort be willing to fall under the authority of another captain.
Yeah, why would you give that up? Like, why?
Unless the deal is so much better than you can make for yourself. And so they try to trade up to a better captaincy. But the problem is those captains have the ability to choose from passengers. Why would they choose another captain?
Yeah. I mean, one, it's rare enough to find somebody else out at sea and like, who even wants to stop the boat for you?
Sure.
So it's like, one, how are you going to find these people? And two, how are they going to stop for you? And then three, then what? What now? Like, one, why are you prepared to like leave your stuff after all the time you've sunk into it? Because now it's like going back to what we were saying at the beginning, these people have spent all of this time and effort to hone this craft and all these things that they've put all this time and resources into. What are you going to do now? How are you going to negotiate because if you're a captain in and of yourself, you already have an itinerary. Are you going to amend yours? Are they going to amend theirs? Probably, I would imagine in that scenario, to have a successful relationship going forward, you would have to have very similar itineraries.
Well, that's really interesting because that brings to mind the idea of the two-body problem. This is something that's been brought up, and a good example for it is, say you have two doctoral candidates that are in the same program, and they're looking for tenured track professor positions at a university once they're done with their doctorate program. You've got two people that are in the same crucible of their own choice to go through this grueling process to become a doctor. And then they go ahead and get together. And how often will they get a tenured track position at the same university at the same time? It is almost impossible for that to be the case. So then what? Do they just go ahead and get their positions across the country from each other? How does that work out?
Or do you try and split the difference and be like, well, you can do the career thing for a while, and then I can do the career thing after this much time? There's still going to be a tough negotiation because you are two different people who pilot two different ways, and you are generally not really going to end up in the same place if you're just taking turns. You most likely will kind of just sit there, take just big old, just going in circles for a while. And it's like, so yeah, go do the thing if that is really what you want to do. We're just trying to challenge individuals to, not even conventional wisdom.
Well, today's conventional wisdom is mixed strategy, right?
But just kind of challenge that mindset, or that kind of give you a little paradigm shift to alert you to the fact that that is going to be very difficult to navigate. And it is very rare to have a successful outcome.
Right. So here's the thing is you have increased opportunity, right? But in exchange for that increased opportunity, you have increased risk. Because say you go through the 10 years of becoming a captain as a woman and you don't find a suitable mate within your reproductive window. Over 80% of women that don't have children reported that they wanted to have children, but never found an appropriate partner with whom to have children.
And then even more so, those who did find somebody, they were past that window.
Right. And I think that that's a huge danger in going through and pursuing the mixed strategy is in the desire to have everything. Sometimes you end up with nothing or substantially less than you shot for.
Yeah, you pretty
And
much
it's a real risk.
You're shooting for the moon.
Yeah, that reminds me of shooting for the moon in spades is, yeah, that's great if you can successfully take all the tricks. But if you miss one, you're going to lose out on so many points. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's why we go ahead and call it shooting for the moon. Now, we talked about a female captain picking up a passenger or trying to find a captain on the dock. And maybe they have a captain where they're on equal footing and they try to take time with each other.
Take turns?
Yeah, take turns with each other. Another scenario is that they find a captain out at sea and they get the captain to get onto their boat. Now it's time to address a fundamental elephant in the room. If a dude gives up that which makes him a captain to get on the boat of another captain, he's going to end up becoming less and less attractive to his mate.
Because he will have to, by default, become less and less of a captain and more of a passenger.
Right. And so the things that were attractive to her in the first place, he begins to lose that over time, right? And that does not lead to good outcomes for either of them, right? If the guy ends up being less attractive to his wife who's a captain, well, he's going to be treated less well over the journey. And if he is less attractive to her, he has less and less power in that relationship to negotiate favorable terms.
I'd like to get weird for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
What you got?
So let's just try and kind of err more on the modern side of things.
Cool.
And divorce the whole biological, what attracts men to women and what attracts women to men.
Okay.
Okay. And just look at this from a logical standpoint and say this person who was attracted to this captain was attracted to this captain who gave up the captain role and hopped on and became more and more of that passenger rather than a captain. Just fundamentally, the reason why this captain was attracted to this captain was because of what they were doing,
right?
Who they were, where they were going, like all of the checklists, right?
Right.
So they are losing those things, which again was appealing to them. So it's not just, oh, women have it so hard because they're gonna lose respect for their man because they're not doing captain things or guy things. Like, let's just take all of that gender specific stuff out of it for the sake of like this modern argument, this like trying to plumb the modern mentality a little bit.
Okay, sure.
And just look at it going, this person like this person for a reason. That reason is not there. That's why they lose respect or they lose their regard for them.
Yeah. So if you go ahead and boil it down, there's a few common scenarios that come from the mixed strategy for women. The first scenario is they become a captain and they find a captain of higher value and they submit themselves to that captain and become a passenger on his boat. Generally speaking, that is a good outcome for that woman that is doing the mixed strategy. She has her own in the event that something goes wrong and she manages to beat the buzzer and have a fulfilling relationship. Cool. That's the ideal circumstance I think most female captains are gunning for. The second scenario is they find a passenger on the dock. A lot of times that could be fulfilling to them if that's what they're going for. Most female captains aren't looking for that though.
We've known a couple of very successful marriages where the wife was the breadwinner, essentially wore the pants in the relationship, and it worked for them.
At least as far as we know,
As
for
far
what
as
we
we
can
know,
see.
from outside of closed doors.
Sure.
We can't see into their lives in their own private bubble. But also, okay, it worked, but it is so rare.
It is incredibly rare
So
to see
you can
that.
tell me, like, you can sit in there in comments and all of that stuff and tell me, but my friend's sister's aunt's dog, I don't know, that kind of thing. It's like
anecdotal, yeah.
Great. That is, I'm so happy. And if that's what you're looking for, and go off, go ahead.
Yeah, go be the unicorn and go find your unicorn.
But we're just talking in actual pragmatic truth of what has been shown throughout eons to work.
Sure. So we got the first two scenarios for the mixed deal. The third scenario is they end up catching up to a captain and getting them to come aboard their ship. Well, they end up losing respect for that guy over time because he becomes less and less the guy that they wanted because they become more of a passenger and less of a captain. And then the fourth scenario is they don't find somebody and they get to go ahead and ride off into the sunset and plot their own course. And for a lot of them, that's preferable to finding a dude that just has a dinghy. And that's great. Like, I am glad that these options are available to people, but I need people to understand that every option and every decision has a consequence. And
for good or ill.
For good or ill. Consequences aren't positive or negative. They just are.
They are.
Right. And so when you're talking about this mixed strategy, it exists and it's great, but it's not without risk. And we just encourage people to go ahead and look inside to know what they really want and to pick the path that suits them best.
Yeah, go do that. You look and you really take inventory of yourself and your goals and your aspirations and how you want to get there. That's it. But at least think about it long term before you really get into something and then you figure out it's not what you want. And you wasted all this time, especially for those who want to go be captains first. You got to think, then what? And how is that going to affect your end game?
Absolutely. And I think that's really important in terms of plotting a course, is just knowing what your overarching value proposition and what you want in your life is, and have those cornerstone and foundational convictions, which will go ahead and stand the test of time. Now, we talked about the challenges of the captain, the prerogatives of the passenger, and we talked about the mixed strategy for women ascending to their captaincy and the various ways that that could turn out. Now, what I want to do is I want to talk about, if you're having problems with optionality as a captain, things to go ahead and look at and things that you can maybe do to go ahead and better your position in terms of getting folks to want to spend money with you, so to speak.
Spend money with you or spend money on you?
Hey, either of them are good, right? It just depends on the content. So if you don't have a good crowd of people trying to solicit your services, take a look at if you've got problems with your ship, problems with your marketing, or problems with your personal presentation. What do those things mean? If you have problems with your ship, well, maybe you need to improve your resources to provide a compelling lifestyle. And the kind of lifestyle that you want to have should be in accordance with your relationship goals, right? If you want to have a long-standing, enjoyable relationship, maybe it's better to spend the time and the resources to build a cruise ship rather than a raft, right? If it's a problem of marketing, well, maybe you need to work on your visible competency. Do people see that you are competent in your arena and that you could be trusted to be a good captain? A lot of those things are a matter of reflections of your actions and your behaviors. And if it's not visible that people can see that, well, that's going to hurt your optionality. And finally, personal presentation. If your fitness isn't up to snuff, that's going to negatively affect people wanting to solicit your services. Maybe your fashion sense could use a bit of an upgrade. That's fine. People can find somebody to give them fashion advice and to buy new clothes and to present yourself well to the world. Or it could be the way that you communicate. I think a lot of times people do not take proper stock of the way that they speak with other people and how they present themselves in word and in deed to the world.
Again, that's that whole, when somebody tells you who they are.
Yeah. So what do you think of those things? Would all of those things be helpful to a guy that wants to be better off in terms of who they can attract?
I think it's very helpful to anybody who pursues any degree of relationships with anyone, like in life. How just to life better? Zhuzh up your front window, because that's the first thing that's going to really influence the end result. But also make sure those things in the front window are in accordance with what you're really about.
Right.
And then finally, like, the actual product that you're pushing needs to be what your elevator speech is, what your front window reflects. It's like truth in advertising.
Right.
So, yeah, so that list about the ship, the marketing, personal presentation, that is like from the inside out.
Yes.
But I don't know. It depends on the specific like pain points anyone is experiencing in the whole like dating game. But I think most of the time you probably want to work on the inside out, because that starts with yourself and where you want to be, what you want to do, how you want to get there, what you're looking for, and somebody else and all of that stuff. And then you can adjust in accordance with that.
Sure.
Rather than just, okay, well, I got to start on working on what I wear and all of that stuff. I wouldn't start there. For
Sure.
this purpose, I would not start there.
Well, I think that's a matter of what the pain point is,
Mhm.
right?
You
Your
don't-
character stuff locked down,
Yeah.
then that's not the problem you're having,
No.
right? And if the problem you're having is you're 150 pounds overweight or whatever, right? Maybe that's the place to go look. Or you wear ill-fitting clothes because you haven't bought clothes in a while. If you've been tightening up or ballooning out a little bit, whatever the situation may be, there are better and worse ways to present that in any case. But yes, I agree that matters of character are definitely the things to work on first and foremost. And matters of window dressing are things that should come from the habits that you cultivate along the way. Because honestly, if we're talking about things like fashion and fitness, those are a natural result of the effort you put in and the disciplines that you have or don't have. Just like how much you have in terms of resources, what kind of house you have. Oftentimes is a reflection of what your income is or what you have decided to invest in that process.
And the final point that's prudent to put up on this is, if you're already like mid-voyage, you're already at, but it's not going as well as it could. It never truly is going as well as it could. But if it's really like, I don't know about this, I regret all of the decisions leading up to this, it is never too late, really, to one, renegotiate with the person that you're on a voyage with. And it's never too late to look at ways you can improve and start with the ways you can improve, not sit there and tell the other person how they can improve.
Oh, don't go pulling the speck out of their eye when you have a log in your own.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
whole thing. And I mean, naturally, there always will be points and stages where you have to renegotiate. It's just, it has to be. New kids come along, new opportunities, jobs, or whatever, what have you. You need to be able to make those shifts. Just like if you're on a cruise and there's like conflict and violence down in Haiti, and you don't want to stop there. You want to go somewhere else where it's better. Stuff like that, where you have to sometimes even shift or adjust your course for the betterment of all the passengers on board and the success of the whole voyage, to provide better for the family, to make everything easier on everybody as a whole. And sometimes it's not what you want to do, but it's what you need to do. And part of that is learning to be a good passenger, to be a good captain for the betterment of everyone.
Sure. Yeah. And if you go ahead and spend 10 years trying to be a good captain, you don't have those 10 years to learn and cultivate what being a good passenger is about too. So that's another tough thing about the mixed strategy for women, is sometimes they just can't do everything.
They can't either let go of being a captain, or they just hate being a passenger so much.
Yeah, and maybe that's just not a good deal for people. And hey, I encourage people to act in accordance with their priorities.
Exactly.
So I think since we're talking about adjustments at the end, I think this is kind of an interesting time to put out some strategies for people that may not be 10s, right? And may have somewhat limited potential. So if a woman's looking for an amazing captain, sometimes the strategy is to find your dark horse, right? So a lot of times that's a matter of going through the checklist and taking a lot of time to suss out the difference and to look at the qualities that other people may have missed to find an amazing captain that maybe he's in the middle of his apprenticeship to go ahead and become a solid captain and he isn't right on the market yet. Sometimes the strategy is to go ahead and scoop him up before he has the whole crowd around him.
Gee, I wonder where I've heard the strategy before. I think I might have lived it.
Right? So you scoop him up before he's a full-fledged captain. Yeah. And if he looks like he's got everything going on, maybe that's the strat.
Then he doesn't even have to have everything going on. I think so many women really they're like, I won't settle. And it's just like delulu about where they're at and their inventory of themselves, and or they don't even know where they want to end up. So they just kind of like, oh, that person only has like 80% of what I want, but all this other 20%. And even if it's not stuff that's actually like
substantial.
Yeah, it's not going to matter. They're just like, I won't settle. And I'm just like, really? Guys, that is honestly the number one strategy, like tip to find your dark horse.
Yeah. Is to be willing to put in the effort to go ahead and suss out, hey, where's his future going?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the male equivalent to that is to find your ugly duckling, right? So the story of the ugly duckling, you know, for those of you who are not familiar, it turns out that there was this duckling that was with a flock of ducks, and it turned out that they were a really ugly duckling. Why? Because they actually were a swan and not a duck.
A duck.
They weren't a duck. And so they're this beautiful swan that you just didn't know existed until they come into their own. And whether it's a woman who's a late bloomer or whether she's got some improvements to make in certain small areas and other areas she's doing great, I think a lot of times it's worth it for a guy that's early on his grind to find an ugly duckling.
Especially that one characteristic that's going to take both of the members of the relationship far is not causing difficulty.
Yeah.
Because even if they're perfectly like amazing, smoking hot, it's like, if they're going to be the whole problem, not even just part of the problem, the whole problem, then weeping and gnashing of teeth ensues.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, right? Because I tell you all the time that your most attractive qualities are not necessarily anything physical. It really more has to do with submission and loyalty.
Yep.
And those are the biggest things. Is with a willing partner, I can do so much more than I could with somebody that's holding me back.
I've always known that like personal development things, they talk about one having like an elevator speech of like you in 30 seconds, or just sum yourself up in like 1 to 3 words. Loyalty is like number 1 on my list personally. I know that because when I decide to invest emotionally, not even just in a romantic relationship, but in a friendship, if you are my friend, I am telling you, I don't care if you call me at 3 a.m, crying your eyes out because you spilt the ice cream. I don't care. When you're having difficulty with somebody else, even at work, I'm like, who do we hate? I once had a friend who was like, we weren't really super close friends yet, but I was telling about how I was annoyed with somebody, and they said, whose tires do we slash? And I was like, you are my people. I almost cried. I was so happy I found somebody to match my freak. It was awesome. And that's just who I am. I am super like what they call ride or die. Yeah. I am that girl. I am absolutely that. And I was like, you want to do a 10-mile death march to find raccoons on an island? Okay, I'm going to hate every bit of it, but this is what you want to do. I'm here for it. Like that kind of thing is important to me. And I think that is honestly what has come through in 21 years of marriage, almost 26 years together. Is like, that is, and it's not just like, fine. It is like, okay, this is not what I want to be doing with my time, but it is important to you. And I'm good with that.
Yeah. And that's the difference between kicking and screaming and willful cooperation or enthusiastic cooperation.
Yeah.
Because, man, we love enthusiasm. It's great. So we talked about a lot of things today. So we talked about the roles of the captain as well as the 3 challenges that are set before him to build his boat, to learn to sail, and to plot a course. And we learned about the passenger and their 3 prerogatives, which are the things that cause the challenges for the captain in the first place, which are to inspect the ship, to test the captain, and to examine the itinerary. We also spent some time talking about the mixed strategy for women in our society and the benefits and consequences of going for those things and recognizing there's an increased level of risk associated with trying to take both paths at the same time. And then we talked a little bit about improving at the end. And if you don't have the optionality you want, some things to maybe work on and then some strategies for some folks that maybe are not already at a 10 at the start of their journey to find a relationship and to secure passage.
I like talking about that kind of stuff, like at the end, like pragmatic, what can you do now kind of things. And I hopefully it came across that we touched on wherever you are in this process.
Right.
Like no matter what, there are things that you can do to make it better for either if you're already in a relationship or you want to be in one and you want to find somebody who's a suitable person along for the journey, for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's where we're going to go ahead and end it for today. If you like what you see, go ahead and hit a like, give us the subscribe if you would, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified when another video comes up. Thanks so much.